Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We are counting down till the trade deadline, just over a few weeks to go. Things are starting to pick up around the NBA. We had the deal done yesterday on the Lakers, Rui Hachimura, that trade with the Washington Wizards. And it feels like there's more buzz in the air lately, which is a good thing. I am excited for this. Keith, let's talk some NBA basketball. Are you feeling the same as me? Like, it feels like things are starting to pick up around not just the fact that a trade got done, but it just feels like there's kind of more out there right now.
Yeah, when you get about 2 weeks out, that's generally when the teams that have been saying it's going to take, 5 first-round picks to get this guy, they start to come down. The other teams that are like, we'll give you 1 protected second, like they start to come up. And
Deal.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that's where it starts to everybody gets a little bit more reasonable. Sometimes one deal pushes things through, and then it's like, all right, that's off the table for us. Now we can go a different direction, and that turns into more action. So, yeah, I think we are getting to a position now where we're going to start seeing more here over the next week or so. There's generally somebody moves early within the 2-week window of the trade deadline. So we're just about there. So we may see something here in the next week, and then we'll go from there.
By the way, before we dive into today's news and rumors and all of that, all the more reason to make sure you are subscribing to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube. Don't forget to turn on notifications as well, so you get notified as soon as we put out the latest video. And then, of course, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. You could do both of those things. By the way, you could subscribe on YouTube and over on the podcast side. So if you normally watch the videos, and then next thing you know, you find yourself you're in the car, you're going to the grocery store, whatever, you can pop on the show.
Don't watch the videos in the car.
Please don't. Please don't.
That's not
but
safe.
In the car, play the podcast version.
That's it. Switch to the podcast version.
Exactly.
Hey, and I want to say on the last video, the Hachimura video, obviously we knew that would do well, right? It was an actual trade. It involved the Lakers. But a lot of really kind words, from folks in the comments. And we really do appreciate those. We do take our time to, peruse through those when we have an opportunity, and just so many nice things. And glad you guys are enjoying the show, and that you guys, enjoyed us nerding out over, what is not a super duper blockbuster trade, but still a very fun trade that we spent a lot of time breaking down all the angles on. It was cool to see how many people really enjoyed that. So very, very, very much appreciated.
Absolutely. 100% appreciated. Love all the kind words that have been coming in about the show. And tell a friend, please do. Let them know.
Yep.
All right. Let's start off just to put a bow on that whole trade. This is, I think, important. The Wizards have indeed been telling teams, and this is what we've surmised coming out of the Hachimura trade, that the Wizards would not trade Kuzma. They've indeed been telling teams that Kyle Kuzma is not available. That tells you that there's probably been some communication between Kyle Kuzma and the Wizards. There's probably some understanding of what it will take to keep Kyle Kuzma this summer on his next contract. And both the Wizards and Kuzma feel pretty confident that that's going to happen.
Yeah, without a doubt. Otherwise, it would be really risky to hang on to him if you thought just, hey, we have a good chance of re-signing him in the offseason, because this is not like this is a surefire playoff team or anything like that, where having Kyle Kuzma is going to make that big of a difference in how this season ends for the Wizards. But where it could make a big difference is if he were to leave this summer for nothing, you are left with, we probably should have traded him. And my guess is everybody knows there's not going to be an extension. I wrote about this extensively on Spot Track. You can just look it up if you're interested in reading it, about why he won't do an extension. Essentially, they can't offer him enough. But to me, this says, yeah, we probably have at least a rough understanding of what it'd take to get him signed this summer. And that was probably part of the motivator behind dealing Hachimura too, was all right, now that's another free agency out of the way. We don't have to deal with that. And we're in a pretty good place with our forward group now. And we feel like we get Kuzma re-signed and off we go. I'm not fully sold that giving Kyle Kuzma $20+ million deal with Porzingis probably going to get another big contract, whether it's this summer or the summer after. And you have Beal. I'm not sold that that's necessarily the best thing for the Wizards, but I kind of get, where their head is on this is, all right, this is the direction we're going as a franchise.
Yeah, Zach Lowe was talking about this earlier on the Low Post, talked about how, he sees it as if you bring Kyle Kuzma back and you lock into Kuzma and Porzingis and Bradley Beal and you're building around that group, that you kind of lock yourself into being like a 36-win team that maybe one season has a good year and pops to 45 wins and you're a second-round playoff exit. And that's probably your ceiling there. And then maybe that's good enough for the Wizards. I think these are good pieces. And here's the thing, though. Like, we get so caught up in this whole you have to either be rebuilding, full on tank, tear the whole thing down, and just lose as many games as possible, or you've got to be a clear cut contender. You've got to be a favorite to win the championship, and you can't be anything in between. There are some times where we see teams that walk that middle road, just not even talking about the financial side of it, but we see teams who walk that middle road who are able to get the right pieces in. I don't know if the Wizards can do this because they haven't been a great team in terms of finding players in the draft, but you get a piece or two in, and that allows you to unexpectedly springboard to that next level. Now, I won't predict that that's where this Wizards team is headed, but sometimes I think we can get a little bit too down on teams who say, you know what, let's just stay competitive, see if we can get a few things to break our way, and then go from there.
Yeah, it's that second part. Like you said, you got to get the part where you do break through eventually, because otherwise, no one should be content sitting around the, even the low 40s win range. Just that's who we are. We're happy to be that team every year, because that's just not good enough. So it's one of those things that the puppy wants to play. He's all fired up. So he's angry because he thinks it's dinner time. Get off.
He's looking around. He's looking around right now, going, trades? Got any trades?
Yeah, exactly.
Got any trades?
Right?
He's all of us right now.
What do we got happening here? So no, he wants food because it is. Full disclosure, it's almost 5:00 here on the East Coast, and usually as soon as we're hit that 5:00 hour, he's like, let's go, put food in my bowl, and I want to eat. So that's what he's all about. But we're for the Wizards, what I was saying is you get stuck in the middle there. That gets a little too much for me. But maybe you do lock into some guys, hit it right on a couple other guys, and then next thing you know, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's jump over to the Portland Trail Blazers. So the Blazers have slid in the standings, currently sitting in 13th in the Western Conference, but we know the West is so compact. It's not as ominous when you say a team sitting in 13th or whatever as it would be in a typical year, because they're only 2 games back of the 6th seed right now.
Yeah, so this was something, again, Zach Lowe pointed this out. I saw him put it on Twitter, and then I believe he said it in the podcast, is from Dallas in 5th down to Portland in 13th. Every single team in that range has 23 to 25 losses. So, I mean, they're all basically essentially almost the same record. Like that is just like, that's like bunkers. Like that's how tight it is, just to give people a real, look at, like, they are all basically right there. This is not when we say it's compact because, a couple games, like this is like win one day and a couple teams lose and you might go up 3 places in the standings, kind of thing. This doesn't even take a good week or a bad week. So just, unbelievable.
So are the Blazers doing the right thing here, even though they've slid a bit, that they are saying, you know what, we're not going to bottom this thing out or anything and get into the tank race. We're going to try to win right now and be essentially, they're announcing that, hey, we will stay as buyers here at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I don't know. It confuses me. The Blazers are Raptors West for me. Like, it's just like, I like all their pieces individually, and then I thought they'd come together okay, but then you look at them and it's like, it kind of doesn't fit here. This doesn't really work, and the results aren't great. But I guess so. I guess it's the right thing to do, because when you have a guy like Damian Lillard, it's very hard to say, let's, tear it down and restart again. And it feels like they have done that multiple times. So I guess, we're kind of in a spot where, all right, let's try to get guys in, because again, that compactness, if this was hey, let's try to make a real run to get to the, into the play-in tournament, I think I would say, let's, move on in a different direction. But this is all right, let's get some guys, and we could be the 5th seed, and by the end of the week. All right, that's that's a little bit different, right? Now you're talking a whole different ball game. So I'm fine with it in general, but I think they just got to be careful, because otherwise you're going to lock into what turns into a very expensive team with what will be some difficult to move contracts, and you're going to be stuck in that 5 to 12 range every single year. And I'm just not sure that's really where you want to be for Portland, when you've basically been there for almost the entirety of Damian Lillard's
Right.
career outside of a few seasons on one side or the other.
Yeah, I think the challenge is if you do decide, hey, we're gonna try to rebuild it. Like, if you were to try and tank this season, you're throwing all your cards in on trying to get Wembanyama, which
Mhm.
you're probably still you've won a
Yeah,
few
you
too
need a
many games
ton of
to
lottery luck. Yeah,
right. You
exactly.
need a lot of luck there to get that. Otherwise, I mean, are you finally looking to pull the plug on the Damian Lillard thing and move on from him? And that's going to be hard to do. I don't know if Portland ever does that.
Yeah.
They're in a tough spot right now, trying to figure out what to do. So I can't say that this strategy is incorrect or anything like that. Like
Mhm.
they probably should, especially when you look at how compact the conference is. Go for it within reason.
If we can pause on the Wembanyama thing, because I don't think we've really talked this,
Sure.
but it's a great point you made of like, have you already won too much? I mean, it's pretty clear to me now, barring some absolutely egregious tanking by some team that we're not expecting, that Houston, San Antonio, Charlotte, and Detroit are that's your four teams that are
Hmm.
fighting for those top three even lottery odds. And that's going to be where it is. And we may see, in the last couple weeks, or we've got those 2 weeks in April
Yeah.
before the season wraps up. We may see some, oh, hey, this guy's out for the rest of the season because
Yeah.
he sneezed the other day. So
He
we
threw his
gotta,
back
yeah,
out with a
right, yeah,
sneeze.
exactly, right. So
That's
he's
reality
gonna,
for you and me, Keith, but it shouldn't be
yeah,
reality for
yeah.
a 24-year-old NBA player.
If you only knew. But yeah, it does, like, we may see things like that because that's how important it is to get into that top three. Because it seems like it's starting to kind of define a little bit. It's Wembanyama at the top, it's Scoot Henderson right behind him, and then a lot of people I know, like Amon Thompson, and think he's going to be really, really good. So that's it's starting to look like there might be a more defined top three. There's a couple other guys I think that could slide into that contention. We're obviously a long way out from that being written, but I do think we are now in a position where it's it's going to be very, very hard. Even like Orlando, who has the fifth worst record in the league right now,
Oh, yeah.
they are 5.5 games ahead of Charlotte in their own conference. They're like 4 games ahead of San Antonio. Like, it's just going to be hard unless you really start, getting over the top with sitting guys out of trying to get down into that range. So never mind a team like Portland or any of these other teams. Like, you're probably just not going to get close enough. Now, you could say, get us in the fifth, sixth, seventh range, and we'll hope for the better lottery luck there. That's fine. But
That's
trying
doable.
to get all the way down into that top three, not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just it. I mean, even if you're like you're at the point where you would have to like you would draw the ire of the commissioner with the stuff you would have to pull in order to catch up with the Hornets, the Pistons, the Spurs, the Rockets right now. Like if you were an outside team trying to do that. And that's so I'm in agreement. I think that's going to be the lottery group there. And you never know with the odds being flattened out a little bit. Sometimes somebody jumps up, but again, that's not something you necessarily game plan for. But all right, let's talk a little bit about the Clippers. They are reportedly not looking to move on from Terrence Mann, and I think this is interesting. Look at Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet as options. Now, clearly the Clippers could use some help at the point guard position. John Wall
Yep.
and Reggie Jackson both haven't quite got it done this season. Terrence Mann would certainly be an interesting trade piece to go get something done, but I would understand why they would be, wary of moving on from him. Lowry and Van Vliet, though, to me, those feel like two players who are fairly far apart in terms of value. So how are you getting these guys? I mean, to me, I've got to imagine Lowry, there aren't teams tripping over themselves to take on the next year of his deal. And then Van Vliet, you've got to pay him next year, which maybe that's not a problem for the Clippers. What do you see them doing on either of those fronts?
Yeah, it's interesting that the rare moment here, mark it down, whatever minute we are in on the show. You don't think Lowry and Van Vliet are pretty similar value guys? I I think I do.
I mean,
I
I'm looking at if it's me, somebody's got to give me something to take on Kyle Lowry.
Wow. Okay. Um.
And I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I don't want to pay him 30 million
Sure.
next season. That's all.
Yeah, and I can kind of get there, I guess. I don't know. I'm starting to get worried that some team's going to really overpay Fred Van Vliet. So maybe I'm doing some projecting on that versus where he is today
Gotcha.
necessarily. he misses a lot of time, and he's a small guard. Small guards who miss a lot of time already, generally it's not like all of a sudden they hit their 30s and they're super healthy and never miss time like that.
Oh.
That rarely happens that way. Lowry, I guess for the Clippers, if we use him to start with, makes sense from the standpoint of I could see taking him on and running in, they don't need something because if they feel like, hey, he's the guy to put us over the top at the position,
Yeah.
I could see that. And I mean, this is where ownership comes into play. $30 million in the, subsequent tax bill that comes along with that doesn't really matter to them. So they don't really care. So I kind of get that part of it for the Clippers. Van Vliet, sort of similar situation, right? You're bringing him on, you're going to sign him for probably less money than Lowry next year, but it's going to run out a couple years longer. But I think these are the things you can do when you are one of the richest ownership groups in the league, or the richest ownership group in the league.
In sports.
In sports, really. Yeah. You can bring these guys, you can make $100 million mistakes. Whereas for another team, that'd be absolutely crippling, right? You would be like, well, we blew it. We thought we had the guy and this all fell apart on us. I think with the Clippers, it becomes, all right, so go get the next guy, right? Go get the next guy. And we just keep this thing moving. So I get it. The Terrence Mann part of it, interesting, right? I think Terrence Mann is a guy who is playing well. He is their starting point guard right now. They had switched to him over Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson was completely out of the rotation before John Wall got hurt. Now Jackson's in again, but as the backup. And I think they are really saying, hey, we don't want to move him. Because the other thing is his contract is weird because right now he's only 1.9 million, but then next year, because he signed that extension, he jumped up to 10.5 and then 11.4 the year after. So that gets a little interesting as far as, what does this look like in a trade? Because you're not moving him as any significant salary match in a deal right now. So that's where I think that factors in as well of, hey, we're getting him on super cheap production. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm looking for veteran point guards. Mike Conley's been another guy who's been in the mix for them as well. So we'll see. But it is one of those ones where I think it's probably unlikely it happens, but I don't know. They do have contracts they can pile together to go get somebody if they really want to.
And I will say this, I don't want to sound too negative on Kyle Lowry. Like on a team like the Clippers, if you've got Paul George, you've got Kawhi Leonard, you've got shooters around him, Luke Kennard, you got plenty of wings, Marcus Morris and Nick Batum, depending obviously on what you have to do to get him. You've got a lob threat there in Ivica Zubac. So what you'd be asking him to do, it's not like Kyle Lowry of 5 years ago where he's really got to go out there and really get things done. If he can just hit a few knockdown threes, have a couple of big games in the postseason for you, and you're probably happy with that. So again, I don't want to write him off as just somebody who's, doesn't have any value in this league. But if I'm most teams, I'm looking at taking on that next year, the salary. And that would be something I would consider. Maybe the Clippers don't though, if they're just, they've got the blank check and they're ready to roll.
Yeah. I think if you're like Washington or Chicago or even like Orlando, Kyle Lowry doesn't make any sense for you because that's where like, okay, that's too much money. You knocked out all of our flexibility for the next couple of years, rest of this year and next year by bringing him in. And he's not the guy who's going to lift you necessarily because you need to be lifted that far. But if you're the Clippers and it's like, hey, we just need somebody to give us 25 to 30 minutes a night at the point guard spot that aren't a mess, then you start to say, all right, that's fine. And then that's where, it helps again, having Steve Ballmer to say, okay, cool, that his, $30 million contract is actually going to cost us, $90 million when it turns into tax penalties and everything else. Then that becomes a whole other story.
He can just dig through his couch cushions. I'm sure he's got it in there, right?
Yeah.
Speaking, we've got, it's kind of funny here. We're talking Lowry and Van Vliet, and now let's go to the Raptors. I mean, all roads lead back to Toronto. The Raptors were they really offered 3 firsts for OG Anunoby? It begs the question. This is the word that's out there, but it begs the question: if the Raptors were offered 3 firsts for OG Anunoby, then why is OG Anunoby still a Raptor?
Yeah,
right. Like
Unless this was like and I'm only using them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm using them as an example. Not saying they did make this offer, but unless this was like the New York Knicks saying, "Hey, we'll give you three first, but three of them are like three crappy protected picks
Correct.
that might not even deliver," because I think they have a Washington pick and a
Yeah.
Detroit pick
Like the
and a
fake first that really are going
yeah,
to become
exactly.
seconds. And
Yeah,
yeah.
and they're just it's hard to see those teams ever being good enough, and if they are, those become picks in the 20s. That seems different. But if it's some team saying, even if it was like, hey, three of our own first, then that I would be like, well, what are we doing here, Toronto? Because it's not like, is OG Anunoby going to be the guy that you're like building whatever your next iteration around is? Now, if you believe that, fine. That's, I personally don't think he is. I don't think he has that kind of upside. And I like OG Anunoby, but I like him a lot more if he's the third, fourth, or fifth best player on a team. I don't think he's a guy anybody should be offering three first rounders for. I think we're everything's a little broken after what happened this summer because it's like, well, Rudy Gobert got this much with the massive contract and all the limitations and issues that come with trading for him. And it's like, but that doesn't mean everybody else has to, then double down on that. But this is also part of what I'm talking about of where if it is that's the asking price, that's the asking price today, 2.5 weeks from the trade deadline.
Right.
That may change. But did they really get offered that? I would like to see a little bit more in depth. All right, who offered that? Because then we can start to parse. All right, let's go. We're probably not going to get
Yeah.
that. So it leaves me a little skeptical. That sounds like one of these yeah, we were offered three first, but then if you really get into it, it's like, oh, so it was like one and protected and then one that's never going to come. That's probably
Right.
what it really was.
So, and when we talk about reading between the lines on stuff like this and who benefits and everything, obviously this benefits the Raptors to put this out there that, hey, somebody's offered three first. So if you want OG Anunoby, which a lot of teams would love to have OG Anunoby, he's a good player and he's a wing and teams need that and all of that. But it just puts out there that, hey, the price tag's high. Somebody offered three first. So you better come strong with an offer for him. So I mean, tis the season. It's this time
Yeah.
of year when this kind of information comes out, and so I don't necessarily buy three first. What in your opinion is fair value for OG Anunoby?
Probably like two
Yeah.
or a really interesting young player in another first.
Yeah.
Three's too much. I mean, Toronto should be asking for that today, but I think being willing to come down to all right, give us and by interesting young player, I mean someone who can actually like play and could be part of like growing with Scotty Barnes or whatever like
Mhm.
that. And if you don't get it, just keep him. Like there's no real reason because now he is going to run into, like we talked about with like Kuzma and those guys,
Mhm.
they're going to run into the same issue with him. Let me pull it up just to make sure I've got it right. They're going to run into the same issue with him next season where he's going to become extension eligible, but they're not going to be able to extend him for a number he's going to want. He'll be at 18.6 million next year. That limits him to, he's only going to be able to go up to about 22-ish million
Yeah.
in that range. And that's just not going to be enough. So you're probably, that contract is going to play out. He'll opt out of his player option in 24-25. So he'll be a free agent in the summer of 2024. And then that becomes, do you miss a little bit of a window here? Because now I'm trading for him with the idea of he might leave. I'm going to get his bird right, so I'd be able to sign him to whatever. But if he leaves, now that turns into a rental, and that may not get you the big asking price. But Toronto may be putting this price on him because they don't want to deal him at all, and they're saying, "Hey, we're keeping him, and we just want to have him as part of whatever our next group looks
Sure.
like."
And just have it be known like, hey, he's really valuable to us and,
Mhm.
and all of that. So that could be something
Exactly.
there too.
Yep.
All right, Keith, let's talk about something that we said this was going to happen over the summer when this deal was signed. The Magic make Mo Bamba available on the trade
Right.
front, but we talked all about how this was a great move by the
Yep.
Magic in order to essentially create an expiring contract, even though technically it's a 2-year deal. Next year's not guaranteed for Mo Bamba. So I don't imagine that he would have necessarily a ton of value, but maybe a piece that you could add into a trade somewhere. Again, it's a what 8 point something $1 million expiring here. Let me look on Spot
10.3.
Tracker. 10.3. That's what it was. Okay, I'm looking here on Spot Track. 10.3, and all of it's non-guaranteed for
Mhm.
next year. So this deal was signed with this in mind to potentially make him a piece to play here at the trade deadline. What do you see them actually doing with this contract though? And I know they've got Gary Harris in a similar situation.
Yeah, and Gary Harris, similar contract-wise situation. He's 13 million
Yep.
non-guaranteed next season, 13 million this season. For that matter, Bull's also in a very similar spot. He's not going anywhere, and he
No.
won't go anywhere next season either. They will guarantee that, and he will stay with the Magic. Gary Harris's spot is they still need guards. They're still they've gotten healthy, but they're still a little light on guards right now, still on the roster. Especially with Jalen Suggs continues to he plays really well, starts to figure it out, and then he misses like 2 or 3 weeks with an injury. So Bomba's situation, though, this team is, yeah, you may have heard, they're flooded with bigs. They've got Wendell Carter and Paulo Banchero who start coming off their bench. They've got Bull. They've got Jonathan Isaac back in the lineup now. They are also playing Mo Wagner a lot, who they really like for kind of all the intangible stuff that he does.
Yep.
He's a top tier irritant. He is just that guy who's
we called him Madman Mo when he was with the Lakers.
And
that's what he is.
Yeah, that's exactly what he is. So when you have all those guys that can play at the 5 potentially, well, there's no room for Mo Bamba now. He's just not going to play. So it starts to turn into, all right, where are we going with this? Now, because it's a non-guaranteed year next year and it's not a true team option, he still is trade eligible all the way through the draft. They could trade him, all the way through the draft and could guarantee a chunk of next year's salary if they needed to do that kind of trade or anything like that. Where if it was a true team option, he isn't trade eligible because he could opt out and become a free agent. So the Magic are in a good spot here.
I mean, a player option there, right?
Or a team option anyway. And he couldn't opt
Sure.
out, but he could be a pending free agent. That's the way to think of it. Anybody who's got any kind of option decision, yes, they could pick it up, but then you'd be on the full hook for 13 million. So why you like those non-guaranteed years is it just gives you maximum flexibility. If he's good, you keep him. If he's not, you either trade him, and if nobody wants to trade for him, you just waive him and move on. He's not going to be a member of the Magic next season. I feel very, very confident saying that. The question is he a member of the Magic in 2 weeks? That's what I don't know. And what you're looking for is some team that's like, all right, we'll take a shot. We either have a spot where we can play him. If he pops, we're fine with 13 million on our books next year, or we really need big depth, or we feel like you blew it with player development. We can figure this guy out. We can unlock him and then go. That's what you're looking for. The problem is, I don't know who that team is today. I think it could develop in the next couple of weeks, but I think it's more likely what we end up seeing is he's either thrown into a slightly bigger deal involving his contract, or this just plays out into the summertime and then he's waived and then Magic move on that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have a hard time seeing it's not just who really wants him, what's his landing spot. It's 10.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like in order to do now, and again, maybe we're talking about a cap space team or something like that, but I mean, it's tough to see in salary matching, who are you sending out that's making that much money that would really fit something that the Magic would want. It gets a little tricky there, but again, credit to the Magic for signing this deal to begin with. Maybe something does pop up by the trade deadline, something bigger that you can throw them into as essentially a kind of de facto expiring contract. And worst case, it's very easy just to walk away from in the summer if that doesn't happen. So I like the flexibility they've got there with this deal.
It is a little weird. I mean, if you look at all his numbers on their face, you're like, wow, all right, he's a big guy. He's not a mix it up inside big. He's not going to be somebody who dominates inside and shoots 60%, but he's almost at 50%. He's 38% from 3 on 2.7 attempts. He was at 38% last year on 4 attempts per game. He does average a block a night. His rebounding's a little weak for what he is, but not terrible. You start to look at it and you're like, there's some stuff still here. He is, he'll be in another couple months here. He's going to turn 25. So maybe he's a late bloomer, but I think for the Magic, it's there's just no room. It's Carter needs to play. He's our guy. We signed him to that nice extension. Banchero is obviously going to play a ton. Bull has emerged. Like I said, they like Mo Wagner. Now Isaac is back. There's a lot of thought. Instead of being a 3-4, Isaac is possibly now more of a 4-5. That's something they're going to figure out over the course of the next 35-ish games or so. What is Jonathan Isaac now moving forward? How does he fit? So it's interesting. Just touching on that, Came back last night, looked pretty good. Played, really pretty solid. Hit a couple jumpers, had a couple nice drives, a couple nice defensive moments. It's funny, part of the whole, is he a 4-5 now versus a 3-4? He has lost a little quickness. You can see that, and that's after multiple knee injuries. That's to be expected. But he's bulked up some. You can see he's worked on his upper body. So I think Jonathan Isaac's a guy who, as a 4-5, that starts to become now that's super duper interesting. And if he's a 4-5 who can switch out and hold his own on a lot of different threes, now that's a guy you can really fit in a lot of different ways. So it's going to be fun to watch how they figure this all out. I said this during the game. First time he's had this issue. But Jamal Mosley's now got a mostly healthy roster. He's going to figure out how to play all these guys. And he's going to get minutes, and to circle it back to Mo Bamba, that's part of it. There's just no minutes left for him. So let's see where he goes.
I think the solution is a Mo Bamba, Bull, Mo Wagner. Then let's throw Jonathan Isaac and Franz Wagner just for fun into the mix, and let's do a supersized lineup. Let's just do that.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, they kind of did already. He's been points this year. Just didn't involve Mo Bamba. Well, it did sometimes involve Mo Bamba. So, yeah, I mean, it's different. I thought you were going to say, let's throw all those guys in. I thought you were playing on the trade machine and getting up to salary matching for like Russell Westbrook or something. That's where I thought you were going. And I was like, dude, come on, man. Like, you don't need to turn the front office show into what our Twitter mentions look like.
Yeah, I was gonna say I live in that world too much. My DMs on Twitter are open, and look, I've gotten some great conversations because of that. But that also means that I get multiple times per day. Who would say no to this? And it's like 5 different Lakers players stacking up all these better minimum salaries, and
they send them in the DM because they're secretly, they know they're ashamed of it and they don't want to put it, just send it to you on regular Twitter where the world can see. So yeah, my DMs are not open because I don't get things that are quite that polite often. Often it goes completely the other direction. So that's why they've been closed down for quite some time.
Understandable why you'd have it closed if that was the case. My Twitter DMs are mostly kind, although now that I've said it, it's gonna turn south. But in any event, the Pelicans are interested in John Collins. I just keep coming back to he's going to be somewhere else by the trade deadline. He's got to be, right? It's been too long that he's been in rumors here. But what do you think about the potential fit with the Pelicans, and how do they get there? How do they get this done to land him?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things with the Pelicans is they've got some people, probably because they spent years of people throwing ridiculous fake trades of Anthony Davis at some of the folks who cover the team there in New Orleans. They're pretty good at understanding the salary matching rules. So they're not out there like pitching, hey, what about, this guy? What about, Kira Lewis for John Collins? That works for us. They get it. Like, you got to do it. So the most often mentioned iteration I've seen, which you can debate whether this makes sense for the Hawks, and they continue to say you probably have to add some form of draft compensation, is something like Devontae Graham, Jackson Hayes, and Garrett Temple. That gets you there salary match wise, brings you in. That's not much value for the Hawks, but part of the value for the Hawks is we get off John Collins' contract. So if you threw in a pick, and we know the Pelicans have some extra picks, right? Because of the Anthony Davis trade and other deals, you could throw in a pick. And what I would do, though, is I'd be like, you're not getting one of the Lakers picks because who knows what happens there. You're getting one of ours because we feel like we had John Collins. That pick's in the 20s, and I'm fine with that. So that's where I would probably go. I would give them one of their own and move on. The fit becomes a little weird because you're probably not starting him. I can't imagine him and Zion would start together when healthy.
Yeah.
So I think and you already have Larry Nance, but I think the idea would be, let's bring Collins in as like the one. He's like a super third big. He's probably still going to play 30 to 35 minutes a night, backing up both Valanciunas and Zion. But then anytime Zion feels something, all right, you sit because we're good. We'll roll forward with John Collins.
Right.
At there. They've got enough other defenders that can probably help protect him a little bit, set him up in better spots, guys like Herb Jones and Najee Marshall. If you played him with Nance, that becomes a really intriguing front court duo off a bench. So yeah, I kind of get it. It feels almost like, well, hey, we can do it without really switching up our rotation all that much. Why not? And then that gives them a protection for, again, if Zion goes down again, we're a little bit protected. And John Collins should not get to a point where, well, that's 25 million of, set it on
Dead money.
fire, and
Yeah.
let's just, that should still be one where if it turns out, all right, this didn't go the way we really wanted and we need something else, you should be able to flip him in another deal down the line. But I don't know. It feels like I'm starting to think you and I are floating towards John Collins Island, because I think we have a different impression of him than a lot of other people do.
It really does seem that way, and so much of it, I think, is tied to his three-point percentage dropping. He's down to 26% right
Yeah.
now on the season, which is not. I mean, he's a career 36% shooter. I just look, the farther into the season that we get, while his percentages kind of stay low, the more we have to buy that. Hey, this is just it's a bad shooting season. Maybe this is who he is now. That type of thing. But it's such a pronounced difference than what we've seen from him in the past. And I know DeJounte Murray coming in, that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't be able to hit an open three if you have that opportunity. But it's such a big difference that I think that we're going to see some regression here. Case in point, I mean, look, again, 36% from three, like it's got to tick back up. We saw the same thing happen this season with Patrick Beverley, where we were saying the same thing with him. Like, look, he's not a 20% 3-point shooter. At some point, he's probably going to move back up closer to his career average. And for the month of January, he's at 33% now. John Collins is. So it is moving upward. And I think if that does get back on track, that goes a long way towards rehabbing his value. I'm not ready just to write him off and say he's just a negative at this point, the way some people are.
No, me either. He's far too good of a rebounder, too, for me to write that off like that. His rebounding, even when it is slipped, you can see it's because, well, he's playing next to Clint Capella a lot, who is also a very, very good rebounder. So there's not as many available rebounds. He showed in that run a couple years ago to the East Finals, he can play small ball 5 in closing lineups if you need him to. You can do that if that's where you need to go. He's not a complete traffic cone or a non-entity at the rim on defense. He can do some stuff. So I really do feel like there's more in there. I feel like the shooting for me is, and you saw it a few games ago, he had a really nice shooting game, got a bunch of good touches. There were guys out of the lineup for the Hawks, so it was a little bit, all right, we can spread the wealth a little bit more. Then you go the last couple games, doesn't see as many good shots.
Yeah.
Then it's like he's in weird spots, and those things turn into, all right, now he's had a bad shooting night. So it's an odd mix there in Atlanta now. I feel like this is the really good example of, you're trying to build a basketball team, not a fantasy basketball team. Of, in fantasy basketball, go get all the best players, because that's the game, right?
Right.
Accumulate stats and go. When you're building a real basketball team, fit matters, chemistry matters, making sure everybody's involved and getting touches matters, especially with bigs, especially with guys who are, rhythm jump shooters and those kind of things, but aren't my always go-to of this is, they're not the Kyle Korver type who is come in, and Kyle Korver today could step on an NBA court
and just drain
and just start draining a couple threes. He probably couldn't do anything else, and he wouldn't be playable, but he could do that. And but when you're a guy who needs touches to feel good about where you are, someone like John Collins, that becomes a little bit different. So I think, I don't know. I feel like someone's going to get him, and then we're all going to be like, oh, wow, John Collins is really good. And it's going to be, So some of us were here telling you the whole time. And believe me, Trevor and I are going to remind anybody who says it whenever we have an opportunity.
You know how much we love victory laps, Keith. And
yeah, right.
Hot takes and victory laps. That is the theme of the show, right?
Hey, I don't do hot takes, but I will take a victory lap when I can, every once in a while.
Oh, sometimes it can be fun indeed. Let's finish off with this. Kevin Durant, could return to action before the All-Star break. He's going to get reevaluated in a couple of weeks here. I do wonder though, like, I saw this. I believe it was Woj that questioned, how close do you get to the All-Star break where you just say, forget it, and then Shams puts out there, he could return before, and that would allow him to play in the All-Star break or in the All-Star game and everything. If I'm the Nets, I'm not messing around with it. If I'm the Nets, and if he's back like 2 games before the All-Star break or something, sit him out through the All-Star break, get him the extra week plus of rest, and then go from there. I don't think they're going to drop out of the playoff race or anything in the East. If there's anything in doubt and it's close to that break, I'm going to go ahead and connect those last few games and say, yeah, let's take it easy for a couple more games, and then we move on post All-Star break.
Yeah, I'm there if it's like any doubt.
Yeah.
No, like that's stupid. He's way too important to this. And I go back to obviously not the same level of player, but was an all-star. Kemba Walker started to have some knee stuff, played in the all-star game, and then played a ton in the all-star game, and literally has never been the same player again. Is it because that all-star game happened about a month later, the league shut down for the pandemic, and then Kemba was never the same guy again, and now is without a team, and we may not see him play in the NBA again. I'm not saying that's where this is going to go with Kevin Durant by any means, but just there's no reason to risk it for the All-Star game. That said, his quote to Alex Schiffer of The Athletic, this was Kevin Durant's quote, is, yeah, I want to play. This is about the All-Star game. I want to be a part of all those events. I miss going back to Golden State, my previous home. So it's been 3 years since I did that. You see all this stuff pass you by, so I want to participate in everything. To me, that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
Like I get it, right? And that's Kevin Durant, I think, owning, hey, I don't have 10, 15 more years of this. Like it's just not going to be a thing for him. And, so I want to, if I have the chance, I want to go. Now, what I think you do is that's where Jacques Vaughn is on the phone with, whether it's Joe Mazzulla or whoever coaches the all-star team, and say, hey, can you, whether he's voted in as a starter or he's coming off the bench, like 2 5-minute stints, and that's it. Like, let him get out there, run up and down, have a little fun, and then sit him. And that's probably how this will go, will be my guess. I don't think we're going to see Kevin Durant out there, going, 20 plus minutes in the All-Star game, but we'll see. Now, from the Nets side, like you said, if there's anything, nope.
Yeah.
No way. Can't do it.
I'm looking, okay, February 13th. They have 2 games left before the All-Star break, and February 13th is at New York. Like the whole, you've got the Battle of New York and Nets versus Knicks and all that. Like the temptation would be if, like, let's say he's not back by Saturday the 11th against Philly, but he's close. The temptation would be just to play him against the Knicks and have him for that matchup. And then he plays against Miami, and then you head off for the All-Star break. But I think the more prudent thing would be, okay, bummer that he's out for the game against the Knicks, but let's not play him through the All-Star break. And then if he wants to appear 5, I don't know if they would even let him appear in the All-Star game at that point, but I would just be extremely cautious with Kevin Durant if I'm the Nets.
Yeah, you have to be, because this is the difference between you being a title contender and you being just kind of a decent playoff team.
Yeah.
If you have him and he's not right, or if you don't have him, if you don't have him, you're just not going to be very much of a threat in the playoffs. If you have him, he's not right. We'll see. If you have him and he's right, we saw what that looked like right before he got hurt. They were playing they might have been playing the best basketball in the league at that point. So that's just kind of where it is. You've got big hopes and dreams with this team. You got to be very, very careful with him, because more than any other player on that roster, he's the guy who's going to get you there. You've got a lot of talent, but it's Kevin Durant's the one who pushes you to title contention.
Now let's say they've got a back-to-back, February 6th, February 7th. They have the Clippers and the Suns. Let's say by that point he's cleared and he's good to go, and he's going to play in one of those 2 games. And then you've got 5 games before the All-Star break. But okay, right? Like, I understand there's obviously levels to this where, okay, if you can get him for 5 games, that's a decent enough stretch of the schedule where you're going to, you have a much better
and
chance.
You're still making that phone call to whoever the coach is, saying, hey, take it easy on my guy, in the game itself, there. So, yeah.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Hey, speaking of All-Stars, tomorrow,
you
and I are going to record our All-Star picks. So, just so everybody knows what's going to actually happen in the league is on Thursday, they're going to announce the starters on TNT. And then it's the week after that, they'll announce the rest of the guys. We're going to go ahead and give you our full picks for both teams. We'll do it by the rules, with 3 front court, 2 guards, 3 front court on the bench, two guards, and then 2 wild card picks. So, there might be a little bit of cheating in there.
Yeah, I seem to recall we did last year.
I think we probably did. Yeah, I think so. Did. So, but yeah, and then we'll see, where we land on, All-Star picks and these kind of things. There's some spots where it's kind of tough. be able
Yeah.
to pick, for sure. So, but yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. So that'll be our show tomorrow for everybody. Just a reminder, because we're getting a little bit closer. Trade deadline day, we're gonna go live
Yep.
probably somewhere in the range of an hour or so before the deadline. We'll be
Yep.
with you all the way through. As we do every year, we will throw one up to the big man upstairs, asking that Woj throws one up to him where he says, "Good Lord," at the
Oh
trade
yeah.
deadline, because it gets so wild.
Epic year.
Even if it doesn't, we'll have fun talking about what happened, what didn't happen,
Right.
what we think should have happened, and all those kind of things. So we'll be live with you guys for a while on trade deadline day. That's always a lot of fun days. People jump in, they'll ask questions and all that stuff, and we'll pull stuff out of the chat and just have a lot of fun reacting to things. Yeah, last year was a blast because we did get a whole bunch of deals. We had a couple earlier, like a day or two earlier, so
Yep.
we were still kind of talking those, and then stuff was coming in, and then you and I were like checking out on the live stream because we're like scrolling through Twitter and like what is
That's right.
happening and,
That's right.
everything. So yeah, it's a really fun afternoon.
I think that's when we didn't we get the Porzingis trade?
I think so. Yeah, I think
I
so.
think
We
that
got
happened
some.
live.
There was a few big ones. I think
Yeah.
that came in like that last. Like I think we might have gone like 2 hours ahead or something like that. But
Right.
yeah, we'll be there ahead of trade deadline. We'll figure all that stuff out. We'll let you all know here on this stream and on our socials and everything about what's going on with that. But we will be live trade deadline day.
All right. All the more reason to subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel and turn on those notifications as well. All right, everybody. That does it for today. Thank you for joining us. We're back tomorrow with our all-star picks. Our all-star picks. I don't know why that's hard to say. We'll be back tomorrow with that. Till then, everybody. See ya and stay safe.